Welcome into the DNZ Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Zach. I'm joined today always with my fellow LOC League mates Drake and Nick, here to bring you the latest news and knowledge in the world of fantasy football, specifically Dynasty football. We kind of have a full slate here today, got a lot of news and notes from the past few weeks or so. We're also going to walk you through some of our LOC trades that have actually gone down. We got a lot of big trades coming down the pipeline here. And then there towards the end of the podcast, we'll give you some of our all-in guys that we're kind of hoping for big seasons this upcoming fantasy football year. And then maybe some red alerts that we're like, ooh, kind of like got to either hit or they're going to miss. So we'll run through all of that. Drake, Nick, it's been a while. How are you guys?
Fantastic. NFL preseason is 1 month away, so we're finally ramping up in this offseason.
Got training camp coming up.
It's a good time.
We're going to Chiefs training camp, right?
Absolutely. And there's some of those season ticket holders can go to some exclusive things where there's not as big as a crowd, which we should have went a couple weeks ago, but we should definitely try and go to some of those things as well.
I'd rather go to training camp than like mandatory mini or OTAs or things like that. So
that's when everyone's there.
Yeah, I think training camp will be cool. There are a couple like season ticket member only training camps that are open, so we definitely need to hit up like one of those days. It'll be hype.
But before you know it, I mean, we're going to be rolling into this season, and I can't wait.
Yeah, let's run. Oh, I guess Nick, how was your 4th of July? How's your life been? What have you been up to?
4th of July, fireworks. The summer has been hot. Zach, I got to loop back. We went to one of those preseason deals when was that?
It was like 2 years ago. It was right before the Chris Jones deal went down, so it was like, probably 2 years ago.
Yeah, wasn't he out there like dancing around, jamming with fans and shit?
Oh yeah, like after practice, he spent like an hour after practice, like going talking to fans, signing shit, and he was like, a bunch of people were all yelling like, we want you, Chris, we want you to stay," and he was all like, happy to be here, I'm here for Kansas City, Chiefs for life, man, things like that.
Yeah, he loves the fans.
Yeah, so Chris Jones, great dude. Big things, I hope. He's apparently not gained a bunch of weight, but put on like some muscle mass. He's ready to be back on that interior D line, ready to go.
We need that D line to be ready to roll.
Yeah.
I said there was a rumor that Robert Quinn coming from the Bears, the Chiefs might make a trade for him or something recently. We'll see what happens. But
yeah,
that'd be interesting. Help out the Chiefs on the D line and Chris Jones there.
On Chris Jones, still, I had this just random daydream visual the other day of imagine Travis Kelce. This is week first home game at Arrowhead. Imagine they throw up on the screen before they run out of the tunnel. What if Travis Kelce was holding Chris Jones? Chris Jones is on all fours like a dog ready to run out of this shit. How hype would that be?
That'd be pretty hype.
And bring back the fire.
Yeah, didn't they ban that?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool, though.
I did love the fire.
If I was an owner, I would fucking have all the fire and
I don't think
pay whatever fine they send my way.
Yeah. I don't know if you can do that, but...
you can. They'll just fine you.
I remember being at the top seat, very top of Arrowhead, and it was right in that corner still where they had the fire, but I could still feel it at the very top of the fucking the top row.
Yeah. Our seats, they're on like the opposite side of the field, and you can feel that shit, and we're up on the top. Yeah, you can feel that shit all across the stadium.
Hazard.
Can you imagine the hype you have to feel as a player to make any kind of a run out to an NFL game?
The sound it makes. I mean, it has to sound like a flamethrower. Like, it's just got to be an awesome feeling. But I guess that smoke shit's pretty cool. Well, we can kind of dive into some recent news and notes. Most recently, as of yesterday, certain quarterbacks on the move. Baker Mayfield's heading to the Carolina Panthers. He was traded for a 5th-round conditional pick, I believe, which could turn into a 4th-round pick. I know they're splitting up the salaries somehow, but Baker Mayfield has a new home. Carolina now has 2 top 3 picks from that 2018 draft? 17 draft.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I had here. I have my notes as 2017, but for some reason I thought it might be 18. But pending a quarterback battle, I put that in quotes. Well, I mean, I don't think there's going to be much of a quarterback battle. I mean, with Sam Darnold still in town. So, I think Baker should be the starter week 1, and he gets to face off on his former team. But I know Nick, you're a big Baker guy. How do you feel? What's his outlook there in Carolina?
Well, I have two fully formed thoughts on all of this, and I need to figure out a third. I can't do it yet. The third would be, how do I feel about Baker in Carolina? Baker is my favorite college football player of all time. It will be really hard. I said it about Sam Bradford, and then Baker Mayfield just knocked that out of the park, and I don't know what it would take to replace him as my favorite all-time player. So I'm still trying to feel about how I feel about Baker, the player, what he's going to do career-wise with going to Carolina. The two thoughts I've fully formed. The Browns, you played yourself like you always do. They got nothing out of this trade. They could have got so much more if they would have done things differently. Shut him down when he's hurt. Maybe don't publicly criticize him as a franchise, because every other NFL team that had any interest knew they had you by the balls. So you played yourself. My second thought is, goddamn no, Zach, what were you going to say?
No.
You were about to go in.
Oh, I was just about to say, they received, the air inside of the bag of chips. They didn't even receive a full bag of chips for him. The conditional 5th-round pick, 4th-round pick, 2 years out is the league minimum that you can trade for a player. That's what the Chiefs traded for Lonnie Johnson, I believe, the defensive back from Houston.
Yeah.
And you're essentially saying that the value is semi-equivalent. Obviously, it's not, but it's just crazy how, like you said, they completely played themselves.
He's a starting quarterback. You don't have to look at anything else other than the fact that he will be a starting quarterback for an NFL team next year, and you traded that away for a 5th-round pick. That's just not a good. And they're paying half his salary.
I like the fit. I like the fit for him in Carolina. He's got weapons around him. CMC stays healthy. He's going to be fantastic running back to have. And I think this is really good for DJ Moore as well. Yeah. He's been a really solid wide receiver. Hasn't really had that solid, big breakthrough season, but Baker's going to be the best quarterback he's ever played with. And I think that's only going to be good for DJ Moore. So, I think this is going to save Matt Rule's job.
It could.
I think. Or it could fall flat on his face. But Baker, he's shown that he can bring a team up, get him to the playoffs. So he's certainly an admirable quarterback and should do okay, I think.
I'll piggyback a couple things kind of with what Nick, I have two pretty much fully formed thoughts on this. One, like we were saying with Matt Rule, the last time Baker Mayfield and Matt Rule shared a field together, it was back in his Oklahoma days, and Matt Rule was back in Baylor, and he was walking around the field, and Baker was saying, you guys are getting ready to call me daddy and things like this, talking all this shit, and Matt Rule was over there looking at him. And so that'll be really fun to see if anything, if they talk about that college rivalry, or if bygones will be bygones.
Baylor was shit that year. We trounced them.
The second thing is, I really, really want Baker to succeed. This man put his heart and soul into the Cleveland Browns. He was drafted number 1 overall into the worst organization of all time. Came out and had a pretty decent rookie season, A, by quarterback standards for rookies, and B, for playing for the Cleveland Browns. And the next year took him to the...
Hugh Jackson's Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. And then was it the second year they took him to the playoffs, or was that his third year?
Third,
so yeah.
That's when he lost to Chad.
Right.
And he had a whole different head coach and a different OC in that in between.
Yeah, he's always had an influx of new coaching
turnover.
staffs.
And this dude, he literally poured it all out. Last year, he was he knew that the team as a whole had the potential to go to the playoffs, and he was hurt, and he knew he was hurt, and he wanted to go out and play because he felt like he was the best opportunity. And I just feel like him playing hurt for that dog shit of an organization screwed him in the long run, because when you're not playing 100%, you're not putting 100%.
Right. You put a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
So I feel bad for the man. I want him to succeed. I want him to go out there. I want Carolina to win 47-2.
Yeah, he gave the Browns 4 competitive seasons.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand that you're wanting to make a change and figure. I mean, especially when you bring in a guy like Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's a totally different story than Baker Mayfield. But it'll be interesting. They'll be going to play week 1. So
especially considering like the division that they were playing in, like for that stretch there, that it was a decent Pittsburgh team before Ben Roethlisberger got hurt and started trending down. They had Lamar Jackson at his hype. They had the Browns. Like that was a decent little division that they were playing in, and yeah, he just got.
And they
screwed.
played the Chiefs a handful of times too.
Yep. So
that's never ended up good for him.
I gotta wrap up my Baker thoughts. My second fully formed thought was that I really wish he would have ended up in Seattle.
Really?
This is for the Baker career trajectory. I love Baker type deal. I just think if he was in Seattle, Seattle's obviously going to do full rebuild. And I just think Pete Carroll would be so good with Baker Mayfield. He would harness all of that chip on the shoulder that Baker has, all the fucking swag.
And that chip is back.
And they would give him, they would say, you're going to be kind of our, they're not going to tell him this, but like he would be their Alex Smith and guide them through the rebuild. And I think Baker would have a lot of success at the same time.
You know, I think it's good for Baker because Baker was always that guy who had a chip on his shoulder, former walk-on, had to earn a scholarship, transferred to OU, became the starter, won a Heisman Trophy, got drafted number 1 overall, and all of a sudden he's on the moon, on top of the world, and has nothing else to prove. So now he's got that chip back on his shoulder. So I think playing with a little bit more of an edge, hopefully. But for fantasy purposes, I mean, how interested are you in Baker Mayfield? I mean, is he a confident quarterback 2 for your roster? Maybe. But I mean, I think he's like still like a quarterback 3.
In our league, no. If it was one of those leagues where like you get like a quarter point per completion or something like that, I would be like all over him as like a low end QB2 still. But the dinks and dunks you would see to Christian McCaffrey, I feel like in a situation like that would be very valuable. In our league and in most traditional Superflex PPR leagues, he's a bye week QB3 type player that you just plug and play. It's not a consistent day to day or week to week starter.
Seems like decent upside at least.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned it with the Seahawks, but they're looking just to roll with Geno Smith and Drew Lock for 2022.
Yikes.
Looking at the trade, I mean, do you think that it was even like a consideration, or do you think Seattle or Carolina was the only one that offered?
I think they would have been dumb not to consider it. I know that there was a report came out that they weren't really interested the day before Baker signed, so they kind of floated that out there to maybe make themselves not look bad for not wanting to be in on the Baker sweepstakes. But at the same time, I mean, Drew Lock, Geno Smith, maybe they're confident that they can just figure it out between the two somehow. I mean, there's still a Jimmy G out there they could go and get. So, I mean, there's still certainly other avenues they go to add a guy to the QB room, but I wouldn't be very confident in Geno Smith or Drew Lock, but maybe it is just that rebuilding year.
I don't think Seattle's confident in those guys either. The way I see it, they probably found out they weren't the best offer and weren't going to counter.
There's nothing worse you can offer, though. Baker. There's nothing worse you can offer.
I bet
for
it had something to do with.
Yeah, they probably would have done that deal all day if they wanted to do the deal.
I think
I
they
bet
know
it had something to do with how the Browns are still paying half of his salary, and I bet you Seattle was saying you got to pay more of the salary. I bet that's what it came down.
And that
to.
was always the biggest thing with Baker.
Yeah, and that was another way the Browns played
he's
themselves.
the 5th year number 1 overall pick. So
another way the Browns played themselves. They never restructured that. They never.
Well, you can't restructure. You can't restructure a rookie deal. It's all fully guaranteed. It's your only contract that's fully guaranteed minus a cut.
Seattle is going to
write
rebuild this year off. They're going to write this year off, and they're going to take one of those QBs next year and go that route. I think Jimmy G is still going to command a salary that it's like we're not going to the amount of money that he's going to command is we want to pay you if we're going to win.
Well, here
they're going to take a dude next year and have him maybe sit behind. I guess never mind. Baker's not there. My dream didn't come true. But
let me present.
They're going to write this year off. They're taking a QB next year.
Let me present.
They don't have faith in either of those.
Let me present a would you rather here, because I do think they're sitting and waiting to see what the whole situation is with Jimmy G. I really do think they're sitting and waiting and think he's probably the best option for them. Because I do still think they're very much a win now organization.
Seattle?
Not a win now, but I think they feel like they're a competitive enough team. Like
Absolutely.
they have enough They don't have
Really?
they don't have a quarterback.
If they can conquer the quarterback position, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really?
They were last year.
They had a decent, they were good with, obviously, with Russell Wilson. He's a great quarterback, but I mean, when he got hurt, they weren't succeeding as much. So, my question is, if Jimmy G gets cut, he's not getting any money. You can sign him to whatever. He's not just going to sit out and not get paid in a situation where
they're very similar with you kind of played yourselves.
In a situation where Baker was still available for what Carolina received, and Jimmy G was cut, and you could just sign him to whatever, and he would be open to whatever. What quarterback would you rather have on your team? Would you rather have Jimmy G or Baker?
If I'm the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah.
Ooh. Do you know?
It's going to be Baker. I mean, Jimmy G, no matter what that whatever is, he's going to be getting paid more money than what Baker Mayfield is getting paid. That $18 million, Jimmy G is going to be getting more than that, and that's.
You think they would sign someone who was just cut from his organization for more than $18 million?
It's just a money deal. I mean, it's just a cut for money deal.
If he was cut and you could sign him for $9 million, approximately what we think Baker's getting paid for.
Baker's getting $18 million next year.
He's being paid $8 million from Carolina, and they're splitting it half and half. So if you could get him for what you're paying Baker, that's what I'm asking.
I feel like they're both very similar. They both come from run-first offenses. That's all they've played in. They both suffered from injuries last season, both to their shoulders. So maybe if you're gonna go with 1 year, and you're drafting a guy next year, what you think the Seattle Seahawks should do? Why? And if Jimmy G sounds like he could be the cheaper option, wouldn't Jimmy G be the smarter move?
Yeah, but he's not the cheaper option. I mean,
he's won playoff games too before.
He's been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he's been to a Super Bowl. I mean, he's never really played
when
poorly.
When he was the starting quarterback for the 49ers.
He has way more going than Baker does on contract negotiation side, other than Baker is way younger.
There's got to be some veteran minimum that maybe Jimmy G has that Baker doesn't have. I'm not positive, but
like I said, with Baker, he's guaranteed his $18 million, and they factored that
still
in.
From his rookie contract.
Yeah, it was like part of it was Cleveland's paying.
Yeah, that's still a ton to pay Baker for whatever. They're not getting anything out of it.
$8 million for 27-year-old quarterback. That's not bad.
Yeah, former number 1 overall pick, former Heisman Trophy winner.
Just never addressed that contract, and like you played yourselves like.
Right. All right, well, we can maybe try to move on and stop talking about Baker Mayfield. These are pretty just quick news and notes. J.K. Dobbins is unlikely to play in the preseason. Definitely not a report you like to see. He suffered that ACL injury last season.
A long time ago.
And if he's not ready to play in the preseason, not even 1 or 2 games, I mean, that is concerning if you're a J.K. Dobbins owner.
He missed all last year, right?
Yes. Injury happened right before the season started. I remember it was like right before we had all of our drafts. And also, no timetable for Deshaun Watson decision. Kind of thought that was going to come soon, but seems like it's not going to be that soon. We kind of think the max is probably like a year, I would say. So it'll be really interesting to see what that decision looks like. Any guesses on what that suspension might be?
I just think it's not on what it would or should be. I think he'll get a year, but I just think it's not. I said earlier, I don't know if like they owe it to the Browns, so they don't owe it to the Browns, but I feel like it's just bad business for the NFL to not make a decision on this early.
Right, they're taking their time.
It's just kind of bad business. It's like It's like how the NCAA played. What's his face at KU? Who swung the bar stool?
Silvio De Sosa.
Yeah, like you just sit on these things, and it's like you're fucking over the guy, you're fucking over the business, the organization as a whole. I just feel like whatever you're going to do, whether it's right, wrong, or whatever, they should do it early.
But the longer they wait, the more information that's going to come out, and they'll be able to make a better decision that way. So I can see that playing into it as well. Also, another guy that just signed to his current team, not necessarily new news, but relative, and Scary Terry signed a deal with Washington for 3 years, up to $71 million. That makes him a top 5 highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, which I thought that was crazy. But good for Scary Terry. I mean, I think he's a really good receiver, and he still has room for improvement, one might say. He does have Jahan Dotson that kind of joined him there in Washington, so maybe Carson Wentz, he's got a couple solid weapons that are going to be sticking around. So maybe Carson Wentz makes something happen there in Washington, who knows, but Scary Terry's sticking around.
I want to bring something up just because I was listening to some sports radio here local in Kansas City, and they were talking about a specific player here in reference to the Terry McLaurin deal, and that's Deontay Johnson, who he was a part of. He was a part of this in this rookie class with Terry McLaurin, with DK Metcalf, with all of these guys. And I'm looking at Deontay Johnson's stats right now. So he's 26, 3 years experience. Last year he finished 8th in PPR.
Very nice.
Almost 1,200 yards. Finished with 8 touchdowns. 10.85 yards per catch.
And that's with the fading Ben Roethlisberger.
Mm-hmm.
He was Big Ben's favorite target.
Yes. So you have Deontay Johnson. And that was with a pretty crowded receiver room too, because they also at that time they still had Juju a little bit in a limited reserve. Yeah. Who's their guy with the dreadlocks that they have?
Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
Seems like James Washington played a little bit as well every once in a while.
So
Pat Freiermuth didn't have a bad season either.
So Terry McLaurin every year, 29 PPR, 20 PPR, and 25 PPR. His highest reception total was 1,100 yards. Right at it was 1,118. 7 touchdowns his rookie year, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns. So, and it seems like Pittsburgh isn't wanting to get a deal done with Deontay. What I was hearing in reference to Deontay was...
They saw that Scary Terry deal, and they kind of compared the two.
And if you
they don't want to pay that for Deontay.
If you think about an organization known for its defense like Pittsburgh, they're known for developing really good receivers too. I mean, they had Juju, Deontay, Claypool's decent. They have
they had AJ
Brown. Yeah, all of these guys he's a defensive guru, but he's throughout his entire tenure, he's always drafted really good in that receiver position, and they've never really signed anyone to super huge mega deals. And so I was just curious what your guys' is Deontay being undervalued, or is the receiver room just being overvalued at this point? And do you think Deontay goes somewhere else, maybe like a Kansas City Chiefs? If you could get him for $20 million a year, $18 million a year,
pay him $85 million on a 3-year deal.
Mm-hmm. It's less than what you would have paid Tyreek, younger than Tyreek.
Right.
I don't know.
It's definitely comparable deals and comparable players as well. I think when you're looking at them and fantasy value, I mean, you definitely lean towards Deontay, especially after you went through the stats. I mean, I think Deontay is a clear favorite if you're trying to pick between the two for fantasy-wise. But
he's always been kind of known as like a stone hands guy, though.
That's been his biggest thing. It's just drops.
But I mean, even with the drops problem, still getting almost 1,200 yards in your most productive season.
And you think he's still at a youngish age and could still clean up his game a little bit more. But I mean, you saw the Steelers draft 2 wide receivers this year. So they brought in George Pickens, and they could still keep Claypool around as well. They maybe don't want to pay
the Canadian
Deontay and keep Claypool. I mean, they're going to go one way or the other, and I don't think you can put too much weight on this one report. But I think bringing in Pickens, I mean, one of those Claypool Deontay.
Someone's
one of them's going.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I was just, when I heard the news of Terry McLaurin and I heard that on the radio, I was like, oh, that's kind of...
But you think it would fit. Like, I
right.
think Pickens could slide in as that number one alpha, and then Claypool's still that second guy there. And I forget who was that other wide receiver they drafted, but, I mean, that's still a solid wide receiver room with still a chance of adding a guy down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can kind of slide on here. This is my favorite NFL coach outside of Andy Reid, Dan Campbell. He doesn't see Jameson Williams being ready to go for day one of training camp. He obviously suffered that ACL
pretty
back
expected.
in January. Yeah.
But maybe he gets some reps in training camp and is ready. Maybe he gets on the PUP list. I think the PUP list is like 4 weeks this week, so maybe they put him on the PUP list to start the year and then get him in. But, I mean, you don't like to see that kind of report, but I mean it was back in January, so it's
still pretty
hasn't
quick.
been very long.
Yeah, it's very quick. And I mean, Jameson was even talking around the time of the draft. He was posting a bunch of videos of him working out, saying he was going to be ready week 1. But I feel like when you invest that kind of draft capital and that much salary into a player and that much of an investment,
they're not going to rush.
You're not rushing him back. No.
Yeah.
The Lions know that this isn't their year. They want to ease him in. They're not going to give him 60, 70 targets in a season. Like, he's going to be sitting there, not on the sideline, but he's just going to be learning the playbook, getting healthy, and making sure he's ready next year. Because I feel like Detroit's someone who will be in the quarterback market either via free agency or in the draft next year.
Absolutely. Next, we can kind of move on. We've had a few trades go down in the last week or so in League of Comp here. The first big trade involved a big-name wide receiver,
blockbuster,
a top pick in our rookie draft in 2022. And it was between your boy Nick here. So, Nick, break it down for us.
Well, just happened to come about a trade.
Yeah, weren't you guys just shooting the shit on the couch, just hanging out?
This all happened very quickly, and an individual in our league who goes by Brooks really wanted Stephon Diggs, and I got a Diggs Josh Allen thing going. Okay?
Yeah, which is very nice.
But he offered me the first overall pick in this draft, which means Breece Hall, and we'll get into Breece Hall later on. I still have my 4, so I'm picking 1 and 4 in this rookie draft. So everybody watch out.
Right, no.
Especially Blair.
Top 4 picks.
And I gave him my 7, and I took his 10. 2, 7, 2, 10. So I gave
Which is a wash, essentially. But those two picks are just a wash. I mean, it's essentially
Diggs
Breece for Stephon Diggs.
Breece for Diggs, yes. And it's going to be in our next topic about Breece players we're all in on.
How does he fit in your roster, you think? Where are you pretty running back needy? You're good at wide receivers. I mean, it seems like you wouldn't have made that trade if you weren't good at wide receiver position.
He'll probably be a flex dude because I have Kareem and I have Zeke and I have wideouts. So it's totally going to be a deal where I just saw all the hype around this dude. I watched him the whole time at Iowa State, and I knew about the mofo in high school. BT dubs. But
your hope is going to have to be wide receiver or a running back too. Because, I mean, Kareem Hunt, I think, could have a solid season, but he's your flex guy.
Yeah.
And even any given week, I mean, Kareem Hunt could not be the guy that does the work. It could be Nick Chubb. So, I mean, Breece Hall, I mean, you're going to see how that season starts because, I mean, he's kind of in a shared backfield as well.
But he's a clear...
I don't disagree with that. I totally agree.
My dick is way bigger than everyone else's dick in this room.
So,
at least Kareem and Chubb are...
You're rocking with Zeke and Breece.
We're equivalent.
For 2022.
Yeah. In my opinion, you completely fleeced this trade. I think you got away with highway robbery.
The computers said I lost the trade, so it's very interesting. Very interesting.
I think it's pretty square because I think Stephon's going to have a great 2-3 year stretch here.
If I were to do the trade, like if I wanted to do if I'm Brooks and I have the 101, my thought process would have been Stephon Diggs, the 104, and I would give you the 101 and the 210, and you would still have you'd have 2 second-round picks. That's what I would have done.
Right. Try to get a little bit more out of the 101. Right, probably
maybe not.
Have.
So yeah, it doesn't. I don't get I don't get a 28-year-old receiver turning 29, and I keep my 101 pick and my 210 pick.
Stephon Diggs is going to be an elite wide receiver for 4+ years in the NFL. I mean,
and Brooks has decent running backs. He's got Kamara and Nick Chubb, but I mean they're both older running backs. So I mean he could have really benefited from drafting a guy like Breece Hall.
He could have. That's why, yeah. In my opinion, I think you clearly won the trade. If I wanted to do the trade, yeah, for the 101 this year, knowing that there's a guy who is the clear-cut favorite, and even like the 102, like if I'm fine with running backs, I'd be fine drafting Drake London or Treylon Burks in the 101.
Right.
If I'm in a wide receiver needy.
I mean, there's like a 50-50 chance, probably even less than that, if Breece Hall turns into the type of fantasy player that Stephon Diggs is. That's no guarantee, even remotely. I think the odds are against that.
No.
So you're getting a guaranteed dude.
But it's possible he could reach that, and he's a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
That's
my biggest thing is.
I think it's very even.
You didn't have to give away.
Going in on Breece.
You were able to gain the 101 while maintaining your 104. That's my biggest thing. That's
very nice.
If I wanted the trade done, if I have the 101, I would need to have that 104. And I don't even necessarily need Stephon Diggs.
I'd still have Stephon Diggs then.
Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily.
Why this trade never happened.
I wouldn't even, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying in Brooks' situation, he gave up way more and not being able to get another first-round pick out of the trade because he essentially gave up his 101. So he gave up the 101. He gave up possibly getting Burks, London, even Kenneth Walker III possibly at the 104. He gave up so much just to get Stephon Diggs.
What you should have done is throw in your 104 and get a 2023 first back from him, because he finished last in the league last year. Who's saying he's not going to finish in the bottom half of the league next year?
Right. So
you're going to get a top pick in the 2023 draft. That would have been interesting.
I
think the deal overall is pretty square.
I allegedly lost this deal according to the computers. This was all about me hoping Breece turns into an elite running back. That is what I'm banking on when it comes to that trade.
Well, in this situation, you're banking on 2 first-round picks, trying to equate what you gave up with Stephon Diggs. And that's what you're banking on because you were able to keep that 101 or the 104, excuse me. That's why I think you won the trade is you didn't have to give up your first-round pick. Usually when you move up in the draft, you also give up, like the Chiefs when they traded up for Patrick Mahomes. They gave up their first-round pick, another first-round pick, to get up to a higher first-round pick. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, those trades just wouldn't have happened.
I do really like using keep trade cut for when I'm just getting some type of baseline to send offers and value trades after they've happened. And I mean, you throw Breece Hall and Stephon in there. I mean, it's pretty even. It's like a difference of not a whole lot. So, I mean, I think the deal's pretty square, and if you're running back desperate, I think it helps your team. I think it helps both ways. It was a pretty even trade, I think, but we'll see how long Diggs hangs in the league.
This is some recent shit.
Yeah, this just happened. I think it was our post-pod just a week or so ago. Another trade that went down was between me and Jacob in our league. I traded away Gabriel Davis for the 201, and it's a 10-man league, so that's 11th overall.
So technically a first-round pick.
Yes, technically a first-round pick. So I really like that. I'm pretty deep at where I don't have a top guy at wide receiver, but I've got bodies. I got guys I can plug in there. And now that I've got 3 picks in the top 13, I mean, I'm going to draft a couple wide receivers just to kind of replace that, what Davis could maybe produce this year. And I think he's a prime breakout candidate, but I'm also worried that because we haven't really, I mean, we saw it in that one game in the playoffs against the Chiefs, but other than that, you haven't really seen it. So I've got him in both of my dynasty leagues. So I wanted a little more diversity, and I wanted another pick in the back end of first round, early second round, so I could maybe lock up a rookie running back just to have that. So I like the trade.
I think this is a more even, obviously, kind of less risk, more reward for both parties in the trade.
Right.
But I definitely think it's a little bit more even than what the previous trade we discussed was. I really like it because, I mean, at that, what would that be? The 201 spot?
Right. That'd give me like a Christian Watson, Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think Sky Moore is going to be there, but should lock me in
depending
a wide
on
receiver.
You could maybe get a Cook. You could
Damian Pierce, Rashad White.
You could get your pick of that
Jahan Dotson,
that second, third tier running backs.
Right.
So I think it's a very good trade for both you guys.
Yep.
I think both of you got at least like a high wide receiver, running back, like 2-3 or flex position player out of this trade.
It'll be interesting to look back down the road and see what I got out of the pick and how it compared to what Gabe Davis. And there was recent news that kind of came out about Gabe Davis. He's kind of in July declared as that second starter next to Stephon Diggs in that Buffalo high passing offense, which can only mean good things. But his value's higher than ever, I think, that it's ever been. So maybe it's the perfect sell high moment, and hopefully that's what's happening and he doesn't end up going crazy in 2022. But I'm also kind of banking on him. I got him in another league, so I'm okay if it goes either way, I guess.
How many games, just off the top of your head, do you think you started him last year?
Oh, probably very little. Let's see. I might have picked him up off waivers at one point. So to trade him for the 11th overall pick down the road.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I bet you, I'm not going to ask you to reveal your secrets, but I bet you have at least 3 players that you just love more than you love Gabriel Davis.
Zach was actually the one that drafted Gabriel Davis.
Oh, yeah.
In the 18th round of our startup last year. Ended up dropping him in November. I added him in late December and then traded him in June.
Damn, I didn't even realize I had him on my roster.
We're in a 10-man lead. I mean, I've got guys that are solidified on my roster that somebody dropped. Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, I mean, it's just kind of what happens in this type of league.
What the fuck?
Oh, what'd you say, Justin Jefferson?
JJ, fuck. I drafted that dude like he was real good at LSU, and then after week 2, 3,
he didn't play. He barely even played.
Was that?
Yeah, you dropped him in our Flea Flicker keeper league, and now he's just the best keeper you could have. Like
still won the title in that
top
league.
3 wide receiver locked in.
Holy shit!
Oh yeah, we'll get to that later maybe.
Why don't you go ahead and give us your 3 all-in guys for 2022?
Yep. So guys that I'm all in on, like desperately all in on, I almost need them to produce is kind of how I went about this, and they're guys that I have on my roster, and I'm really banking on them to be solid, or at least what they were last year, and don't decline. But I've got 2 here. So my first one's Antonio Gibson. It's kind of been a guy that's been losing value this whole offseason with everything that's happened, re-signing J.D. McKissick, drafting Brian Robinson, the coach coming out and openly saying his workload's gonna reduce. It's gonna be split. It'll vary week to week. But I've got him in 2 dynasty leagues. He's my running back 2 in League of Comp. So he's produced a top 15 running back finish 2 seasons in a row. So I understand there's more competition in that backfield, but he's shown it in the past, and I think he can do it. It's just whether or not they're gonna give it to him, that workload. I think that's the only thing that's missing, but I am all in, whether I like it or not, on Antonio Gibson.
I love Antonio Gibson.
I have to.
You love to try to pawn off on Antonio Gibson on other players.
Dude, I've been trying to trade him for a while now, and I won't hide that fact. I mean, I'm bored. I try to trade for everybody and trade anybody. Anybody's on the table.
To see the value that he sees while he's trying to get equal.
And there's certainly value. I mean, he's still a young guy on his rookie contract.
He used to be a wide receiver.
So he's got that capability, but they don't use him that way. So I'm all in, whether I like it or not. My second guy here, Trey Lance, which I'm
Trey Lance.
little bit more excited about. I've got him all over the place as well, and I mean, I think he's poised for a really solid season and career. Whether he's good, I mean, I think he's going to be a little bit better of a version than Jalen Hurts. I think that's kind of my mindset right now, and I think that's pretty generous, especially since you've only seen him start 2 games. But he's got the rushing upside. He's in a really good offensive scheme. So he's got the draft capital. I'm all in on Trey Lance all the way in. I think he's going to have a great season.
Can't go wrong with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Nope.
Quarterback whisperer. Yeah, I think he's in good hands there.
And I do have one honorable mention here as well. It's my guy, Brandon Cooks. He's put up numbers ever since he's been in the league. I think he's had a top 20 finish all but 1 year because of injury. And he's still going to be that number 1 guy in Houston. He's got Davis Mills coming back. They've seem to have a pretty good connection. And I think he's just a consistent go-to guy that you're really going to be able to rely on. So I think that's a good honorable mention for me. Brandon Cooks.
I like these guys. Nick, why don't you go ahead and run through what you have here?
Well, first and foremost, I have to go with CMC, Mr. Christian McCaffrey, Mr. Blue Eyes White Privilege himself. So while not in LOC, we did have a blockbuster trade in another league for CMC.
We did.
We've had, and that team is a flaming pile of dog shit.
But you've got CMC.
It's kind of been mentioned before, but we don't need to go into that. But CMC, I just seem to strongly disagree.
You're all in.
With you guys here on CMC. Everyone seems to be writing him off. He did have 2 years of injuries. None of those he didn't tear anything. None of that. Nothing structural. So what I'm banking on is CMC coming back, doing what he did before, which is just PPR, fantasy football nonsense.
And you have no hesitation taking him in redraft leagues or any other type of formats. If you're confident in CMC this season.
If you guys look up, if you just Google mock drafts, standard ass regular mock
his
drafts,
value is
nothing.
Fantastic.
He's being taken in the top 10, top 5. I was seeing in 2 different top 100s, second overall. So people are expecting him to bounce back just fine. People get hurt all the time. He didn't tear an ACL. He didn't tear.
Yeah, they're all normal injuries for a running back.
Yeah.
But he did miss a lot of time.
Would you rather have CMC or Najee?
CMC.
In Dynasty?
CMC is the greatest fantasy football player of all time. And
my biggest concern,
essentially taken 2 years off. Both of his injuries have been, you can return, but we the Panthers are just going to sit you as the asset that you are. That was both of his injuries.
My biggest concern, if he gets injured again and misses a substantial amount of time this season, his value,
that's for sure,
and your fantasy football season obviously as well, but his value is shot. You're not going to be able to
for sure.
You're going to have to trade him for nothing.
No, so, for sure.
But if he stays healthy, if he's healthy and he plays in games and gets the full amount of snaps that he normally gets, he's going to be fantastic.
My second homeboy got to go in. It's your boy Breece Hall. It's the one,
the beast.
In almost any draft you might participate in this year, rookie-wise. But Breece Hall's going to be my guy. I made a big trade for him that we just discussed, sending off Stephon Diggs, breaking up that relationship I had with Diggs and Josh Allen. It's all about Breece Hall with that pick. So just what I've known about this dude. I watched him in college. I've consistently thought he was the best running back in football in his Iowa State years. And the player comps he was getting, if you look at some of the nerds and how they crunch their various numbers, when you get to the end of those calculations, they're giving him CMC comps. So if you're saying I get maybe 70% of a CMC, I'm all in on Breece Hall.
I like it. Big fan of Breece. You got one honorable mention. Who do you got there?
Honorable mention. I wouldn't even make him honorable, but I know we had to do that in this point.
Well, he's certainly honorable.
Debo. The table hates Debo. I don't know why.
I don't hate Debo.
I've just always said he was a good sell high candidate because he had a really good season. I don't think he's going to produce it again. But I mean, he's still going to be a good fantasy asset. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, dude's young. He's had 1 year off. And everyone gets hurt. People are going to get hurt next year.
He barely even had
every week.
He barely even had a year
players
off.
Players. Everyone gets hurt.
Honestly, hasn't missed a whole lot of time.
At any point, did you ever consider Debo for your trade for the 101? Like if you,
that would have been money.
If you could have,
that would have been money.
If the options were, I want Debo or I want Stephon Diggs, plus everything else for the trade, would you have done Debo or Stephon
for the
Diggs?
101?
Yeah,
all day.
How high are you on Debo?
I really like Debo.
So would
I wouldn't have moved the 101, or I wouldn't have.
You wouldn't have moved Debo for the 101?
You would do Diggs for the 101, but you wouldn't do Debo?
That would have been me switching out like Diggs or Debo. There's not too much of a difference there. Like,
I don't disagree with that, but I definitely see Diggs having a better season, at least this coming year. But this is Dynasty, so you lean towards the young guys. So it's a good mindset.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. Like Drake said, I've never been like low on Debo. We've always just considered him as a sell high candidate. It's not that we don't like him. We just think that his peak value is right now. I mean, if he plateaus and he has another great season, obviously it gets a little bit higher. But like
that sell high window is still there, by the way.
For having one good season thus far, you can get really good value out of him.
Yeah, you could almost wait till he signs a contract and stays in San Fran, which could happen or could not happen. But maybe once that happens, he gets some type of 2-3 year deal, whatever it is. Then that's an even better sell high window.
Everyone gets hurt. Players are players.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with his injury history.
Yeah, we've never been down on him for his injury history.
I think you just misunderstand because this is just production and whether or not he reproduces.
I'll misunderstand my way
because
into another championship.
You can't just bet on him doing exactly what he did. You can't guarantee that, and it's not a good rule of thumb to just assume what he did last year is what he's going to do this year. It's just a bad way of playing fantasy football.
Players, though, when I own a player in a fantasy league, that leaves a very lasting impression on me. It really does. Like when
they're hard to get rid of. You get attached to them.
When
I hear
players ball out 1 year, it's just so hard to get rid of them. Even when the facts are on the ground and reality's in your face, you're like, but
it's almost like they balled out because you had them on their team.
No, exactly.
See, I do the opposite.
Very attached.
If I have a player, at least in the dynasty, like I've tried to not offload, but I've tried incorporating Jalen Waddle in a trade. I've tried incorporating Devontae Smith in trades. I've tried incorporating Ramondre Stevens in trades. Like all those guys had good to great fantasy football, had good to great football seasons last year. I've tried incorporating them in trades, and just no one.
It's tough to trade in our 10-man league sometimes.
Yeah.
But, Zach, we can move on to your guys. I think here we're ready to roll for your all-in.
Sure. So I kind of did a little bit differently. I went with a rookie that I maybe have my eye on. One guy I have that did pretty decent in my league, and one guy that I picked up off the waiver wire that I'm hoping for a really good season. So Chris Olave I have is a guy that I'm all in on. I think he's in a really good situation as long as Jameis Winston is healthy. They have Mike Thomas there. If he can be healthy, I think he's in a really good situation.
Mike Thomas, Jesus,
yeah, what
slant boy?
He still plays.
What a guy, hasn't been healthy in a few years, but I think he's
Can't guard Mike. Is that
that's
name?
him? Yeah,
yep.
That's him.
I think he's in a really good situation to succeed. So he's a rookie that I'm really big on, and I think has pretty decent value where he's at. If I can get him there in the later half of the first round,
right there with your 107. I mean, that's certainly the range that Olave is going in.
Right. So between him and Sky Moore, I just wanted someone that was a little bit different for our Kansas City fans here. So Chris Olave, I'm pretty big on. Kyle Pitts, I know it's hard to be this is a guy I'm all in on who finished top 6 in his position for our
in his
league.
rookie season, which
Right.
tight ends don't do a whole lot. But
No.
he's the best tight end
Right.
prospect of all time.
But his biggest knock, I feel like, last season was his red zone touchdown.
Right.
Just his touchdown scoring.
Didn't he
period.
only have
He only
one-
had one touchdown all of
one
last year.
touchdown.
He
That's-
finished with over 1,000 yards with only one touchdown. So he's a guy that I'm hoping can hover between that 800 and 1,000 yard receiving, with maybe being a reliable big target in the red zone for a Marcus Mariota, or they have Ritter, correct?
Yep.
There.
Yep.
So I'm hoping for him to get a little bit more red zone targets, and maybe them being a little more pass heavy instead of relying on the run game. Cordell Patterson running it in from the 8-yard line. So
Yeah, I definitely see him scoring more than one touchdown.
Yeah,
I think
so-
that's locked in.
So I'm big on him, and for tight ends, it's a huge jump. Like if you're the 10th rated tight end, jumping to the 5th rated tight end to the 1st rated tight end, like that, those are all huge jumps for tight ends. So him moving from 6 in our league to maybe even like a 4 or a 3 would be a huge jump, and I'm huge on that for him if he can just get that those touchdown numbers up. And then the last guy, and I'm not the only one who's all in on this guy, it's Daniel Jones. He's been not he's been quoted, but the Giants have been quoted saying that they're all in on him, trying to use his assets more, use more of his big arm, use more of his legs. So as long as he can stay healthy, I know he had that concussion last year. He's had a couple concussions in his football career dating back to college, but I'm big on him. He's someone that I picked up off the waiver wire. I'm very quarterback needy, so I just need him to do well. So I'm all in on him.
I hope that works out for you.
I mean, they got a new coaching staff. I mean, it's a coaching staff from Buffalo. It was that offensive coordinator, so he's dealt with a quarterback. I mean, it's hard to compare Josh Allen to Daniel Jones, but they do have similar traits. Maybe he's able to use them in a better way than he's ever been used. And they did draft a guy in Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, they've got the most expensive roster, like overall. It's not just the wide receiver room anymore.
Previously discussed.
Overall, that roster is the most expensive roster in the NFL.
So-
Hilarious.
I think as long as Saquon Barkley can stay healthy and they have that
Be
threat of
huge.
the running game, like I feel like Daniel Jones just has a whole, I'm going to use this in quotations, arsenal of weapons that he can use to be more productive as a quarterback. And hopefully, if he can finish somewhere in the range of like QB 22 to 18, I would consider that as a win, picking him up off the waiver wire for me. All right, so that concludes all of our all-in guys. Let's hop in here to some of our red alerts, some guys that are a little bit past due, maybe are kind of being phased out of their offenses, going to have limited fantasy relevance.
Dudes, you need to trade now while you still can.
Yeah, it's past due. You better get on it.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and say Devin Singletary. I'm with, when we've talked about this with a guy out of Tennessee, Treylon Burks. Jeez, I'm always bad with names. Like, Treylon Burks has had nothing but, like, mediocre to, like, bad headlines about him. It's always about his asthma. He's missing practices. He can't handle the NFL level practices. For James Cook, it's all about, wow, he's adapting really well. He's performing really well. Obviously, these are all shorts practices in the summer, but James Cook has had nothing but really good headlines and how he might be the guy going into the season. So for Devin Singletary, obviously, again, it's all shorts practices. We don't know who's going to be the number one guy there in Buffalo. Try and offload him if you can get a mid to late second round pick, an early third. If you can get any pick for Devin Singletary, I would say now is the time to eject.
Go get a second round pick for him. Take a 2023 second round pick. Do that as soon as possible, because
just jump ship.
he's not going to be there in 2023.
No.
So
No.
my guy on red alert. You got to try and get rid of him as soon as you can. And he does have value, still being a quarterback, is Ryan Tannehill. We all saw Tennessee. They've got that 1 seed last year, and we all saw them crash and burn in the playoffs. It seems like they always do that. Tannehill is not the guy. He is not going to win them multiple playoff games and get them, because they're a win-now team. They have a really good roster, really good defense. They still have Derrick Henry. But Tannehill is not the guy. He's going to be the starter this year, but they did draft a guy like Malik Willis, who I like his potential. and could be that quarterback next year, depending on if they address the situation before then. But Tannehill, I mean, I think he's got a 2022 outlook of maybe a similar season like last year, but after that,
QB 12 too. Like if you're someone like me, like I would love someone to finish QB. Like I'm big.
Right.
I'm big on Daniel Jones trying to finish top 20 for me. If I could go out and trade a second round pick for Ryan Tannehill,
right,
I'm gonna go out and do that just because I need someone to finish in the top 15 for
My
me.
biggest worry
in the
is
Superflex league.
He lost A.J. Brown and got Treylon Burks. So losing a guy like A.J. Brown, I mean, Treylon Burks is pretty comparable to A.J. Brown, but he's not A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a proven stud in the NFL, is a top wide receiver to have on a roster. So losing a guy like that, and I mean, I think he still has a decent outlook for this season. I mean, I think he could still do, like I said, what he could maybe do what he did last year. Maybe a top 15 finish is still possible. But after that, I mean, that's why he's on a red alert. You got to get rid of him, man.
Yep.
He's not your
Eject.
future.
Eject.
Yes.
Nick, who do you got?
I got to go with Derrick Henry for
Staying with Tennessee.
For somewhat different reasons. Just the fact that Derrick Henry is probably going to be a top 5 running back this year. There's a good chance he could be a top 5 running back next year. So what we want to look at is, where are you at? Are you winning now if you have Derrick Henry on your roster? Because if you're not, he, again, like I said, he probably is going to be a top 5 running back this year. But when you look at running backs in general, this question was already raised about him coming into this season.
Like the past few years, right?
Yeah. You always see a huge drop-off in these numbers. And especially with him where he's at his age, these dudes can't really take the carries anymore. Just Derrick Henry is going to be a guy that you can trade to your average fantasy owner, because no one is doing as much research, as much care, as much effort. If you're listening to this podcast, you're already doing more than what your average fantasy owner is doing. And when you serve up Derrick Henry on a plate,
oh, they're going to be interested in that.
Yeah.
Maybe trading for like ETN and a second round pick or something, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe even ETN and a first round pick. I mean, shoot for the moon with that, with Derrick Henry.
Yeah, you'll be able to get away with murder. I just slurred all of that. Sorry. We're like 4 claws deep, folks.
And like you said, I mean, he's an older back. I mean,
Like what you did with Stephon Diggs.
Running backs fall off a cliff. Like when he burns and is done and the tank is empty, like it's over. There's no coming back. It could be like a Todd Gurley finish.
If you're a Derrick Henry owner, if you're not looking at winning your league this year, you have a very high chance of getting away with murder.
Sell now
on a trade there, because there's plenty of dudes that are chopping to get a name like Derrick Henry.
Yeah. And that'll pretty much conclude this episode of the DNZ Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate all of our listeners, all 5 of them. So go ahead, if you're new here, give us a like and follow. Subscribe to the channel there on the YouTube. We would really appreciate that. If you have any questions or want us to talk about some trades, drop us a comment, send us a DM on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. We would really appreciate it. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time on the DNZ Fantasy Football Podcast.